Eric Kamaid Freixas is a federal interpreter who helped translate for the cases of nearly 400 illegal immigrants arrested in May at an Iowa meatpacking plant. It was the largest criminal enforcement operation ever carried out by immigration authorities at a workplace. Mr. Kamaid Freixas is speaking publicly for the first time about his experience.
What was striking was to see these people enter, and basically, they're shackled at their feet, at their wrists, and their wrists are shackled to their waist, so chains. And so they can only take a few little steps, very short little steps, and the chains are dragging on the floor. So it makes a terrible impression. Then you see that they are all about 5 feet tall. And you start, when they start calling their name, you start recognizing Mayan names, last names. So there was a real racial contrast between the detainees in chains and the rest of the court with this grandeur. They were being charged, with Social Security fraud, using a false Social Security number. But what struck me was that they were also being charged with aggravated identity theft. And that just seemed awkward. It didn't fit. Many of the people we interviewed didn't know what a Social Security number was or what it's used for. And you could tell they were telling the truth because they would say it with shame, like they didn't want to appear ignorant. But you would ask them, what is this number here? I don't know. And who put it there? Well, at the factory, at the plant, they just filled it out for me because, I just don't know the language. The truth of the matter is that many of them couldn't read or write Spanish, let alone English. So, and one of the elements of the offense of Social Security fraud is knowingly. So there was a pretty good indication that many of them were actually not guilty. Yet they had no choice but to plead out. It's an uncomfortable situation because we are not supposed to show any emotion or any indication of preference or favoritism or bias. And we're not supposed to be commenting what's going on. So everybody was going about their business. Everybody was doing their duty. But there was a somber aspect to it, a certain heavy-heartedness. After the arraignments, the initial appearances, they were sent to jail. We went with the defense attorneys to meet individually with them in jail and explain the plea agreement that the government was offering. It worked like this, basically. If you plead guilty to knowingly using a false Social Security number, the government will withdraw the heavier charge of identity theft, and you would have to serve 5 months in jail before being deported. If you pleaded not guilty, it could take 6 to 8 months waiting for a trial. And since these people were under an immigration detainer, they have no right of bail. So basically, even if they felt they were not guilty, if they pleaded not guilty, it meant waiting 6 to 8 months in jail for a trial. And then at trial, they always stood the risk of losing. And then if they lost, they were facing at a minimum of 2 years in prison. They were begging to be deported. They had families, whether in Iowa or many of them back in their countries, who depended on them. They were the sole earners I remember one case, it was a 19-year-old young man. He was the only one in his family who got sent out to work. He was the only provider for his family. His parents were too old to work, so they sent him to basically risk it and get across the border and so forth. So he was worried sick. I don't want it happening again. I don't want it to happen again. As a citizen, I have the right of speech, which I think takes precedence over everything else. And so far, my colleagues have supported me, and I hope that many other people will as well. I have tremendous respect for the men and women of immigration and customs enforcement. These people do, a very honorable job. They are my colleagues when I'm in the legal system. They are my co-workers. They're doing their job. And the problem is, like many people have said, our system is broken. Well, in this case, these agencies have been given way too much power by Congress. A power that was designed to fight the war on terror, and which now they are using to fight the war on illegal immigration.